I thought I would spend some time chatting about these 10 tips that I have for getting POs from chains, but I'd really like to have an interactive session where I can answer everybody's questions and we can have some fun with this. I do have a unique background because I spent 7.5 years, most of that term, as chairman of the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, which at the time was the largest purchaser of California wine in the world. And we were the second largest purchaser to Costco when I left in 2007. And it was an interesting tenure, loved running the PLCB. We had 3,500 employees, 650 stores. So it certainly was a big chain and gave me a unique perspective. And in January of 2007, I formed my own company, which has been in existence for over 10 years now, doing wine brokerage. So I'm in Napa and Sonoma every couple months, France, travel quite a bit, always finding that great new winery to introduce to large retail chains. So here we are with 10 important factors that I think can help get your brand picked up. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is how you should have that relationship with the wine buyer. Well, the key, first of all, is getting introduced to the wine buyer, right? Having somebody make the introduction. But once you get to know somebody who is a wine buyer at a chain, what is appropriate with relationships? You have to be careful in some states, in control states, for example. In Pennsylvania, it's technically illegal to give a pen to a state official nowadays. So you certainly can't take them out to dinner. You want to have a relationship with them, but how do you have an appropriate relationship with them? For me, the number one thing when I was a state administrator was brokers that would give me great deals to make me look good in starting my chairman selection program in those introduction to wineries, and people that provided me with information. So if somebody, and it's easily, if you're a big buyer and you're getting swarmed by a lot of people, you want to have a rapport with people. But the worst thing are people who pester you, send you needless emails, and after a while you hit delete and you never want to talk to that person again. But the people I would love dealing with are people that would bring special opportunities to me, that would make me look great, that would be successful in the state of Pennsylvania, and in private industry, ones that chains are going to get very excited about. You don't want to pester that person with annoying emails. Give them information. Send them an article with an update. Chile just had a very small early harvest. If somebody buys a lot of Chilean wine, meaning prices for wine in Chile could be going up. What's happening with the champagne market if you're buying in champagne? What's happening with Bordeaux pricing in the last vintage? I love getting interesting articles from people, and those are the way you want to cultivate relationship, by being appropriate and giving your wine buyers interesting information. When I ran Pennsylvania, the guys there, the way they ran their marketing program is they would typically go out and play golf with suppliers. And I thought there was a better way of doing business. And I brought my team to California and traveled to hunt down those great deals for our consumers in Pennsylvania. And I started the chairman selection program. And the suppliers and the wineries that I knew brought me exciting offering, those were the people that I would take their phone calls. And you would do things for your suppliers that would help them and you at the same time. I remember one of the marketing companies brought me an opportunity in purchasing a California wine called Phelps Insignia, if you know Insignia. And it was the 2000 vintage, and it was in 2002, and the economy was a little bit off. And Phelps Insignia was a brand that was selling for $120 in the market, and we were selling it for $50 in Pennsylvania. And we moved through 700 9-liter cases very quickly. And the person who ran Phelps, a great guy, the late Tom Shelton, called me up and said, did this company sell you Phelps insignia? And I told him I did, and he asked what the price was, and he says he's going to buy up all the inventory and bring it back. And I told him that I was looking at a display at the stores right now, and it was already in our stock. And he was about to fire the marketing company, and I thought of a creative solution. And that was, after taking a couple hours, what if we take all our Phelps insignia stock and bring it into our stock room and take it off the floor? That would satisfy him, I thought, because nobody would see it stacked out, and it might help some of our beleaguered employees that felt they weren't interacting with consumers and weren't taken seriously to have something very special in the back room. And the way I sold that concept to the store employees at one of the monthly tastings I would do with them is this was a deal that was so hot and exciting that we had to have it in the back room. So when you see your consumers that are shopping that $20, $30, $40 bottle, trade them up to a $50 bottle that has more significant savings and give them something that's really exciting. Tom thought it was a great concept, so I saved the relationship with the marketing company, and the stock went to the back room, and every bottle sold out within 2 weeks because people thought it was so exciting. And these are the kind of interesting programs. If you are a winery and you want to do a special program with a retailer, make sure it's an exciting program to the extent that the retailer wants a sustainable program. Do something that is sustainable, but you have to make that retailer look like everybody else, the most important retailer that you have. Not that you're offering something to everybody, but something very unique to that retail chain that make them feel that you're bringing something very special. And that goes with one-time buys and special promotions. If I was buying for Pennsylvania and somebody gave me a promotion that was offered to everybody else in the world, it wasn't really interesting to me. But if I was getting something that was unique to Pennsylvania, or in my purchasing for Stu Leonard's, Joe Canal's, wine still sold out, if I get something that's very exciting and unique, and I know it can differentiate them, that they can have strong gross profit margins and have something exciting to sell, that's something where the supplier gets my attention. The other thing is, everybody says that press is passé, everybody is just bloggers, nobody pays attention to Wine Advocate anymore. That's not true. I see what sells at retailers, and I can tell you that Wine Enthusiast and Wine Advocate and Wine Spectator and the major publications like that that get those 90+ ratings sell wine. But beware, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So if you're sending a publication, if you're sending wine to one of these publications, understand who you're sending it to, what that person likes about particular wine, and if you fit the taste profile of who you're sending it to. Because if you get an 83 rating from one of those publications, you're going to really kill sales. But getting a wine that gets a 93 rating, that gets people excited, and I know for a fact it helps sell wine. The other thing, as a wine purchaser, and this is something that Stan and I discussed, I want to know about all press. So if somebody sends me a 90 rating in Wine Advocate and they don't say anything about the other press and it's gotten an 82 in Wine Spectator, I'm a little upset. I'm disappointed that that person isn't giving me all the available press. So I'm very clear with the people that I do business with kind of what the rules of communication need to be, and having that candor and making me look good to the people that I'm representing and selling them wines and getting special opportunities. The other thing, and I can tell you from experience in Pennsylvania, and this is part of the Total Wine model, and so many other successful retailers, are in-store tastings. Having the consumer taste your great quality wine, assuming it's a beautiful wine and it's in the bottle, getting it in front of them, that can make a huge difference. The power of suggestion, showing somebody that the wine is beautiful and telling them the marketing story. So when they go home to their spouse, they say, I tasted in the store today. This is a 6th generation producer. I met one of the family members. Anything you can make that wine special and personalize it to the consumer, and you're willing to do that for the retailer, that's going to get them excited about purchasing wine from you. And there's other, branding that you can do in stores and other concepts that can increase that in-store traffic and the publicity. Shelf talkers. There's so many wines that are out there right now. Having an appropriate shelf talker, if it's an import and it's an American audience, you need to make sure the language is appropriate for that American audience, that it's something that's going to resonate with the American consumer, and it's something where you're going to be able to capture the consumer's attention in about 2 seconds, because that's all you have with all those brands there. So shelf talkers are great, and other POS materials that really highlight your brand, but it can't be rambling. If you had that 92 rating, that's something that you should blast. If you've got great accolades and you've gotten great medals, or you've got a great marketing story to tell, that's got to be front and center. The other thing is, whether it's on-premise or off-premise, you have to be available in the market. This is very expensive, and I understand that. But training staff, touching the person who is the wine seller, those things are so key. And I've seen imports come into the Pennsylvania market, or on websites like Wines Till Sold Out or other large retailers, and brands that shine. Once they get that toehold and you get those loyal consumers, you're off to the races. And the kind of things that I've talked about is, don't give generic information. Consumers eat up information, and again, it makes them look special when they're bringing that bottle of wine home. The vineyard, the family history, anything you can tell about the story behind wine. And you also want to update your website. Don't have an old static website, or if you're an import, a website that isn't translated to English, or if it's translated to English, it's done poorly. It's got to be something that's appropriate, and it's got to be something that reads well, and it's got to be updated with new information. If I read a winery website and I see information 3 vintages back, I'll think as a purchaser or as a consumer that they're backed up on wine and unable to sell current vintages. So I want to see information to show the wine is exciting, what's happening, is it being poured at great restaurants, something about the brand to show that the brand is really hot and sexy. The other thing is, you got to stand behind your product, right? If there's any kind of problem, that retailer is king. If they think that the wine isn't quite correct, or there's a problem with the cork or anything, once you've captured that sale, you've got to make good, and whatever it takes to make right on the products. Because, and especially from the customer's vantage point, once the customer complains and brings inconsistency to the retailers, your product's done. So all that hard work is for naught. And attractive packaging, you want that label to look great. I can't tell you how many wineries, some imports, unfortunately, either they're trying to sell a supermarket package to fine wine stores, or the label just doesn't look appropriate, or it's not interesting to the consumers. It's so important to have the label look great, to make sure it doesn't look like a cheap bottle. I'm not saying to everybody you have to have a huge carbon footprint on your wine, but a big bottle, a nice punt, a good-looking package, an attractive label. We take these things for granted, but I've had so many wines that are presented to me where I look at the bottle and I put it away. I don't even want to taste it first because the package is so awful. So anyway, those are some of the topics that I thought are great factors to make you successful in being picked up by chains. but I would love to field your questions. I have everybody silent. There's got to be a couple questions out there. I'm sorry, please.
It was mentioned before, I think, by Steve about the direct-to-consumer situation for Pennsylvania, and if it's favorable for foreign producers. Can you just comment on that?
You know, John Bodette and I, and my son, John Jr., who's in the audience, have read that legislation very carefully, and we're confused. It's interesting that Pennsylvania, that didn't really comport itself to Granholm, suddenly allows imports to be sold direct to consumer. There's all sorts of problems, though. Getting the wine from a country to a Pennsylvania consumer in a timely manner, that's very tricky. But don't be surprised if some enterprising wholesalers are working to create websites, and they could be third-party marketers and bring that wine in and sell the wine direct to consumer. There are definitely more direct to consumer possibilities for domestics, which is very easy in Pennsylvania now and was impossible before, and is less expensive than it is to get wine at a local store. That opportunity exists in Pennsylvania. Nobody has ruled yet, meaning the legal team in Pennsylvania, as to the logistics on how they're going to pull that off. But make no doubt about it, it is legal under the law now. So Pennsylvania, a very tight control state that didn't allow any room, has legislation that makes that a reality. How they're going to put it together, I think we'll know in the next year. Any other questions? Please.
Following on from that, are there any consequences related to the World Trade Organization rules?
I would leave a question like that to John Bodette. I don't follow the World Trade Organization rules, but from a logistical point of view, that's going to be a nightmare, and I think it's going to have to be consolidated in America before it goes direct to the consumer. Other questions?
Jonathan?
Yes.
Just adding to
Please.
that, I think there was some language in the TTIP negotiations that were ongoing with Obama's administration, but of course they've now taken a back seat. But there's language in there that addresses the fact that there's this disparity going on. And as a matter of fact, I was at some meetings down in Washington back about 12 months ago, and it looked like they were going to make a pretty big deal out of it. And that's why I go back to keep it in the forefront and make sure that each of the countries, if you're dealing with any of, on the trade side, to keep that front and center, because without that, it'll just linger the way it is today. But I think there's an opportunity, and Jonathan is right, and he's an attorney. The way it was written in Pennsylvania, the good news is it's a break. It's the first time a state has actually allowed, but I think when it was written, I think it was written from the standpoint of not realizing that imports have to go through an importer with label approvals and things like that. So I'm not sure, as Jonathan said, where it'll come out, but there's opportunity here, but it's going to take everybody who cares about it saying something about it.
Anything else? Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. See you later.